Hope he rekindled, and in hope ended. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted, out of loss, out of life, unto long glory. But Mary stood at the foot of the green mound, and he wept, and when the song was ended he arose and cried, Theoden King, Theoden King, farewell, as a father you were to me for a little while. Farewell. When the burial was over and the weeping of women was stilled, and Theoden was left at last alone in his barrow, then folk gathered to the golden hall for the great feast and put away sorrow. For Theoden had lived to full years and ended in honor no less than the greatest of his sires. And when the time came that in the custom of the mark they should drink to the memory of the kings, when Lady of Rohan came forth, golden as the sun and white as snow, and she bore a filled cup to Eomer. Then a minstrel and lore-master stood up and named all the names of the lords of the mark in their order. Yorl the Young, and Brego builder of the hall, and Alder brother of Balder the hapless, and free wine, and gold wine, and Daer, and Graham, and Helm who lay hid in Helm's Deep when the mark was overrun. And so ended the 9 mounds of the west side, for in that time the line was broken. And after came the mounds of the east side, Freelaf, Helm's sister's son, and Leofa, and Valda, and Falca, and Falkwine, and Fingel, and then Gel, and Theoden the latest. And when Theoden was named Eomer, drained the cup. Then Eowyn bade those that served to fill the cups, and all there assembled rose and drank to the new king, crying, Hail, Eomer, king of the mark. At the last, when the feast drew to an end, Eomer arose and said, Now this is the funeral feast of Theoden the king. But I will speak ere we go of tidings of joy, for he would not grudge that I should do so, since he was ever a father to win my sister. Hear then all my guests, fair folk of many realms, such as have never before been gathered in this hall. Faramir, steward of Gondor, and prince of Ithilien, asks that Eowyn, lady of Rohan, should be his wife, and she grants it full willing. Therefore they shall be troth-plighted before you all. And Faramir and Eowyn stood forth and set hand in hand, and all there drank to them and were glad. Thus, said Eomer, is the friendship of the mark and of Gondor bound with a new bond, and the more do I rejoice. No niggard are you, Eomer, said Aragorn, to give thus to Gondor the fairest thing in your realm. Then Eowyn looked in the eyes of Aragorn, and she said, Wish me joy, my liege lord and healer. And he answered, I have wished thee joy ever since first I saw thee. It heals my heart to see thee now in bliss. When the feast was over, those who were to go took leave of King Eomer, Aragorn and his knights, and the people of Lorien and of Rivendell made ready to ride. But Faramir and Imrahil remained at Adoras, and Arwen Evenstar remained also, and she said farewell to her brethren. None saw her last meeting with Elrond her father, for they went up into the hills, and there spoke long together, and bitter was their parting that should endure beyond the ends of the world. At the last before the guests set out, Eomer and Eowyn came to Merry, and they said, Farewell now, Meriadoc of the Shire, and hold wine of the mark. Ride to good fortune, and ride back soon to our welcome. And Eomer said, Kings of old would have laden you with gifts that a wain could not bear for your deeds upon the fields of Munburg, and yet you will take naught, you say, but the arms that were given to you. This I suffer, for indeed I have no gift that is worthy. But my sister begs you to receive this small thing as a memorial of Durnhelm and of the horns of the mark at the coming of the morning." Then Eowyn gave to Mary an ancient horn, small but cunningly wrought, all of fair silver, with a baldric of green, and writes had engraven upon it swift horsemen riding in a line that wound about it from the tip to the mouth, and there were set runes of great virtue. "This is an heirloom of our house," said Eowyn. "It was made by the dwarves, and came from the hoard of Scatha the worm. Ural the Young brought it from the north. He that blows it at need shall set fear in the hearts of his enemies and joy in the hearts of his friends, and they shall hear him and come to him." Then Mary took the horn, for it could not be refused, and he kissed Eowyn's hand, and they embraced him, and so they parted for that time. Now the guests were ready, and they drank the stirrup cup, and with great praise and friendship they departed, and came at length to Helm's Deep, and there they rested 2 days. Then Legolas repaid his promise to Gimli, and went with him to the glittering caves. And when they returned he was silent, and would say only that Gimli alone could find fit words to speak of them. "And never before has a dwarf claimed a victory over an elf in a contest of words," said he. "Now therefore let us go to Fangorn and set the score right." From Deeping Combe they rode to Isengard, and saw how the Ents had busied themselves. All the stone circle had been thrown down and removed, and the land within was made into a garden filled with orchards and trees, and a stream ran through it. But in the midst of all there was a lake of clear water, and out of it the tower of Orthanc rose still, tall, and impregnable, and its black rock was mirrored in the pool. For a while the travelers sat where once the old gates of Isengard had stood, and there were now 2 tall trees like sentinels at the beginning of a green-bordered path that ran towards Orthanc, and they looked in wonder at the work that had been done, but no living thing could they see far or near. But presently they heard a voice calling Hum-Hum, Hum-Hum, and there came Treebeard striding down the path to greet them with Quick Beam at his side. "Welcome to the Tree Garth of Orthanc," he said. "I knew that you were coming, but I was at work up the valley. There is much still to be done. But you have not been idle either away in the south and the east, I hear, and all that I hear is good, very good." Then Treebeard praised all their deeds, of which he seemed to have full knowledge, and at last he stopped and looked long at Gandalf. "Well, come now," he said. "You have proved mightiest, and all your labors have gone well. Where now would you be going, and why do you come here?" "To see how your work goes, my friend," said Gandalf, "and to thank you for your aid in all that has been achieved." "Well, that is fair enough," said Treebeard, "for to be sure Ents have played their part, and not only in dealing with that accursed tree-slayer that dwelt here. For there was a great inrush of those, Bururum, those evil-eyed, black-handed, flint-hearted, claw-fingered, foul-bellied, bloodthirsty, Mormate Sinkahonda. Well, since you are hasty folk and their full name is as long as years of torment, those vermin of orcs, and they came over the river and down from the north and all round the wood of Lorland Dornan, which they could not get into, thanks to the great ones who are here." He bowed to the Lord and Lady of Lorien, and these same foul creatures were more than surprised to meet us out on the wold, for they had not heard of us before, though that might be said also of better folk. And not many will remember us, for not many escaped us alive, and the river had most of those. But it was well for you, for if they had not met us, then the king of the grassland would not have ridden far, and if he had, there would have been no home to return to. We know it well, said Aragorn, "and never shall it be forgotten in Minas Tirith or in Edoras." "Never is too long a word, even for me," said Treebeard. "Not while your kingdoms last, you mean, but they will have to last long indeed, to seem long to Ents." "The new age begins," said Gandalf, "and in this age it may well prove that the kingdoms of men shall outlast you, Fangorn, my friend. But now come tell me, what the task that I set you? How is Saruman? Is he not weary of Orthanc yet? For I do not suppose that he will think you have improved the view from his windows." Treebeard gave Gandalf a long look, almost a cunning look, Merry thought. "I said, I thought you would come to that. Weary of Orthanc? Very weary at last, but not so weary of his tower as he was weary of my voice." I gave him some long tales, or at least what might be thought long in your speech." "Then why did he stay to listen? Did you go into Orthanc?" asked Gandalf. No, not into Orthanc," said Treebeard. "But he came to his window and listened because he could not get news in any other way, and though he hated the news, he was greedy to have it, and I saw that he heard it all. But I added a great many things to the news that it was good for him to think of. He grew very weary. He always was hasty. That was his ruin. I observe, my good Fangorn," said Gandalf, "that with great care you say dwelt, was grew. What about is he dead?" "No, not dead, so far as I know," said Treebeard. "But he is gone. Yes, he is gone 7 days. I let him go. There is little left of him when he crawled out, and as for that worm creature of his, he was like a pale shadow. Now do not tell me, Gandalf, that I promised to keep him safe, for I know it. But things have changed since then, and I kept him until he was safe from doing any more harm. You should know that above all I hate the caging of live things, and I will not keep even such creatures as these caged beyond great need. A snake without fangs may crawl where he will." "You may be right," said Gandalf, "but this snake had still one tooth left, I think. He had the poison of his voice, and I guess that he persuaded you, even you Treebeard, knowing the soft spot in your heart. Well, he is gone, and there is no more to be said. But the Tower of Orthanc now goes back to the king, to whom it belongs, though maybe he will not need it." "That will be seen later," said Aragorn. "But I will give to Ents all this valley to do with as they will, so long as they keep a watch upon Orthanc, and see that none enter it without my leave." "It is locked," said Treebeard. "I made Saruman lock it and give me the keys. Quickbeam has them." Quickbeam bowed like a tree bending in the wind, and handed to Aragorn 2 great black keys of intricate shape, joined by a ring of steel. "Now I thank you once more," said Aragorn, "and I bid you farewell. May your forest grow again in peace. When this valley is filled, there is room and to spare west of the mountains, where once you walked long ago." Treebeard's face became sad. "Forests may grow," he said. "Woods may spread, but not Ents. There are no Entings. Yet maybe there is now more hope in your search," said Aragorn. "Lands will lie open to you eastward that have long been closed." But Treebeard shook his head and said, "It is far to go, and there are too many men there in these days. But I am forgetting my manners. Will you stay here and rest a while? And maybe there are some that will be pleased to pass through Fangorn Forest, and so shorten their road home." He looked at Celeborn and Galadriel, but all save Legolas said that they must now take their leave and depart either south or west. "Come, Gimli," said Legolas. "Now by Fangorn's leave, I will visit the deep places of the Entwood and see such trees as are nowhere else to be found in Middle-earth. You shall come with me and keep your word, and thus we will journey on together to our own lands in Mirkwood and beyond." To this Gimli agreed, though with no great delight, it seemed. "Here then at last comes the ending of the Fellowship of the Ring," said Aragorn. "Yet I hope that ere long you will return to my land with the help that you promised." "We will come, if our own lords allow it," said Gimli. "Well, farewell, my hobbits. You should come safe to your own homes now, and I shall not be kept awake for fear of your peril. We will send word when we may, and some of us may yet meet at times, but I fear that we shall not all be gathered together ever again." Then Treebeard said farewell to each of them in turn, and he bowed 3 times slowly and with great reverence to Celeborn and Galadriel. "It is long, long since we met by stock or by stone of Vanamar, Vanamelian Nostari," he said. "It is sad that we should meet only thus at the ending. For the world is changing. I feel it in the water, I feel it in the earth, and I smell it in the air. I do not think we shall meet again." And Celeborn said, "I do not know, eldest." But Galadriel said, "Not in Middle-earth, nor until the lands that lie under the wave are lifted up again. Then in the willow meads of Tazarenen we may meet in the spring. Farewell." Last of all Merry and Pippin said good-bye to the old Ent, and he grew gayer as he looked at them. "Well, my merry folk," he said, "will you drink another draught with me before you go?" "Indeed we will," they said, and he took them aside into the shade of one of the trees, and there they saw that a great stone jar had been set, and Treebeard filled 3 bowls, and they drank, and they saw his strange eyes looking at them over the rim of his bowl. Take care," he said, "for you have already grown since I saw you last." And they laughed and drained their bowls. "Well, goodbye," he said, "and don't forget that if you hear any news of the Entwives in your land, you will send word to me." Then he waved his great hands to all the company and went off into the trees. The travelers now rode with more speed, and they made their way towards the Gap of Rohan. And Aragorn took leave of them at last close to that very place where Pippin had looked into the stone of Orthanc. The hobbits were grieved at this parting, for Aragorn had never failed them, and he had been their guide through many perils. "I wish we could have a stone that we could see all our friends in," said Pippin, "and that we could speak to them from far away." "Only one now remains that you could use," answered Aragorn, "for you would not wish to see what the stone of Minas Tirith would show you. But the Palantir of Orthanc the king will keep to see what is passing in his realm and what his servants are doing. For do not forget, Peregrine Took, that you are a knight of Gondor, and I do not release you from your service. You are going now on leave, but I may recall you. And remember, dear friends of the Shire, that my realm lies also in the north, and I shall come there one day." Then Aragorn took leave of Celeborn and Galadriel, and the lady said to him, "Elfstone, through darkness you have come to your hope, and have now all your desire. Use well the days." But Celeborn said, "Kinsman, farewell. May your doom be other than mine, and your treasure remain with you to the end." With that they parted, and it was then the time of sunset. And when after a while they turned and looked back, they saw the king of the west sitting upon his horse with his knights about him. And the falling sun shone upon them, and made all their harness to gleam like red gold, and the white mantle of Aragorn was turned to a flame. Then Aragorn took the green stone and held it up, and there came a green fire from his hand. Soon the dwindling company, following the Isin, turned west and rode through the gap into the wastelands beyond, and then they turned northwards and passed over the borders of Dunland. The Dunlendings fled and hid themselves, for they were afraid of elvish folk, though few indeed ever came to their country. But the travelers did not heed them, for they were still a great company and were well provided with all that they needed, and they went on their way at their leisure, setting up their tents when they would. On the 6th day since their parting from the king, they journeyed through a wood, climbing down from the hills at the feet of the misty mountains that now marched on their right hand. As they came out again into the open country at sundown, they overtook an old man leaning on a staff, and he was clothed in rags of gray or dirty white, and at his heels went another beggar, slouching and whining. "Well, Saruman," said Gandalf, "where are you going?" "What is that to you?" he answered. "Will you still order my goings? And are you not content with my ruin?" "You know the answers," said Gandalf. "No and no. But in any case the time of my labors now draws to an end. The king has taken on the burden. If you had waited at Orthanc, you would have seen him, and he would have shown you wisdom and mercy." "Then all the more reason to have left sooner," said Saruman, "for I desire neither of him. Indeed, if you wish for an answer to your first question, I am seeking a way out of his realm." "Then once more you are going the wrong way," said Gandalf, "and I see no hope in your journey. But will you scorn our help? For we offer it to you." "To me?" said Saruman. "Nay, pray do not smile at me. I prefer your frowns. And as for the lady here, I do not trust her. She always hated me, and schemed for your part. I do not doubt that she has brought you this way to have the pleasure of gloating over my poverty. Had I been warned of your pursuit, I would have denied you the pleasure." "Saruman," said Galadriel, "we have other errands and other cares that seem to us more urgent than hunting for you. Say rather that you are overtaken by good fortune, for now you have a last chance." "If it be truly the last, I am glad," said Saruman, "for I shall be spared the trouble of refusing it again. All my hopes are ruined, but I would not share yours, if you have any." For a moment his eyes kindled. "Go," he said. "I did not spend long study on these matters for naught. You have doomed yourselves, and you know it. And it will afford me some comfort as I wonder to think that you pulled down your own house when you destroyed mine. And now, what ship will bear you back across so wide a sea?" he mocked. "It will be a gray ship and full of ghosts." He laughed, but his voice was cracked and hideous. "Get up, you idiot!" he shouted to the other beggar, who had sat down on the ground, and he struck him with his staff. "Turn about. If these fine folk are going our way, then we will take another. Get on, or I'll give you no crust for your supper." The beggar turned and slouched past whimpering. Poor old Grima, always beaten and cursed. How I hate him! I wish I could leave him." "Then leave him," said Gandalf. But Wormtongue only shot a glance of his bleared eyes full of terror at Gandalf, and then shuffled quickly past behind Saruman. As the wretched pair passed by the company, they came to the hobbits, and Saruman stopped and stared at them, but they looked at him with pity. "So you have come to gloat too, have you, my urchins?" he said. "You don't care what a beggar lacks, do you? For you have all you want, food and fine clothes, and the best weed for your pipes. Oh yes, I know where it comes from. You would not give a pipeful to a beggar, would you?" "I would if I had any," said Frodo. "You can have what I have got left," said Merry, "if you will wait a moment." He got down and searched in the bag at his saddle. Then he handed to Saruman a leather pouch. "Take what there is," he said. "You are welcome to it." It came from the flotsam of Isengard. Mine, yes, and dearly bought," cried Saruman, clutching at the pouch. "This is only a repayment in token. For you took more, I'll be bound. Still, a beggar must be grateful. If a thief returns him even a morsel of his own, well, it will serve you right when you come home, if you find things less good in the South Farthing than you would like. Long may your land be short of leaf." "Thank you," said Mary. "In that case I will have my pouch back, which is not yours and has journeyed far with me. Wrap the weed in a rag of your own." "One thief deserves another," said Saruman, and turned his back on Mary, and kicked Worm Tongue, and went away towards the wood. "Well, I like that," said Pippin. "Thief indeed. What of our claim for waylaying, wounding, and orc dragging us through Rohan?" "Ah," said Sam, and Bodhi said, "How, I wonder." And I didn't like the sound of what he said about the South Farthing. "It's time we got back." "I'm sure it is," said Frodo. "But we can't go any quicker if we are to see Bilbo. I'm going to Rivendell first, whatever happens." "Yes, I think you had better do that," said Gandalf. "But alas for Saruman, I fear nothing more can be made of him. He is withered altogether. All the same, I'm not sure that Treebeard is right. I fancy he could do some mischief still in a small mean way." Next day they went on into northern Dunland, where no men now dwelt, though it was a green and pleasant country. September came in with golden days and silver nights, and they rode at ease until they reached the Swanfleet River and found the old ford east of the falls, where it went down suddenly into the lowlands. Far to the west in a haze lay the meres and eyots through which it wound its way to the grey flood, their countless swans housed in a land of reeds. So they passed into a region, and at last a fair morning dawned, shimmering above gleaming mists. And looking from their camp on a low hill, the travelers saw away in the east the sun catching three peaks that thrust up into the sky through floating clouds: Caradhras, Celebdil, and Fanuid Hall. They were near to the gates of Moria. Here now, for 7 days they tarried, for the time was at hand for another parting which they were loath to make. Soon Celeborn and Galadriel and their folk would turn eastward, and so pass by the Redhorn Gate and down the Dimril Stair to the Silverlode and to their own country. They had journeyed thus far by the west ways, for they had much to speak of with Elrond and with Gandalf, and here they lingered still in converse with their friends. Often long after the hobbits were wrapped in sleep, they would sit together under the stars, recalling the ages that were gone and all their joys and labors in the world, or holding counsel concerning the days to come. If any wanderer had chanced to pass, little would he have seen or heard, and it would have seemed to him only that he saw gray figures, carved in stone, memorials of forgotten things now lost in unpeopled lands. For they did not move or speak with mouth, looking from mind to mind, and only their shining eyes stirred and kindled as their thoughts went to and fro. But at length all was said, and they parted again for a while, until it was time for the 3 rings to pass away. Quickly fading into the stones and the shadows, the gray-cloaked people of Lorien rode towards the mountains, and those who were going to Rivendell sat on the hill and watched until there came out of the gathering mist a flash, and then they saw no more. Frodo knew that Galadriel had held aloft her ring in token of farewell. Sam turned away and sighed. I wish I was going back to Lorien." At last one evening they came over the high moors, suddenly, as to travelers it always seemed, to the brink of the deep valley of Rivendell, and saw far below the lamps shining in Elrond's house. And they went down and crossed the bridge and came to the doors, and all the house was filled with light and song for joy at Elrond's homecoming. First of all, before they had eaten or washed or even shed their cloaks, the hobbits went in search of Bilbo. They found him all alone in his little room. It was littered with papers and pens and pencils, but Bilbo was sitting in a chair before a small, bright fire. He looked very old, but peaceful and sleepy. He opened his eyes and looked up as they came in. "Hello, hello," he said. "So you've come back? And tomorrow's my birthday, too. How clever of you. Do you know, I shall be 129, and in 1 year more, if I am spared, I shall equal the old Took. I should like to beat him, but we shall see." After the celebration of Bilbo's birthday, the 4 hobbits stayed in Rivendell for some days, and they sat much with their old friend, who spent most of his time now in his room, except at meals. For these he was still very punctual as a rule, and he seldom failed to wake up in time for them. Sitting round the fire, they told him in turn all that they could remember of their journeys and adventures. At first he pretended to take some notes, but he often fell asleep, and when he woke he would say, "How splendid! How wonderful! But where were we?" Then they went on with the story from the point where he had begun to nod. The only part that seemed really to rouse him and hold his attention was the account of the crowning and marriage of Aragorn. "I was invited to the wedding, of course," he said, "and I have waited for it long enough. But somehow, when it came to it, I found I had so much to do here, and packing is such a bother." When nearly a fortnight had passed, Frodo looked out of his window and saw that there had been a frost in the night, and the cobwebs were like white nets. Then suddenly he knew that he must go and say good-bye to Bilbo. The weather was still calm and fair, after one of the most lovely summers that people could remember, but October had come, and it must break soon and begin to rain and blow again. And there was still a very long way to go. It was not really the thought of the weather that stirred him. He had a feeling that it was time he went back to the Shire. Sam shared it. Only the night before he had said, "Well, Mr. Frodo, we've been far and seen a deal, and yet I don't think we've found a better place than this. There's something of everything here, if you understand me. The Shire and the Golden Wood and Gondor and kings' houses and inns and meadows and mountains, all mixed. And yet, somehow, I feel we ought to be going soon. I'm worried about my gaffer, to tell you the truth." "Yes, something of everything, Sam, except the sea," Frodo had answered, and he repeated it now to himself. "Except the sea." That day Frodo spoke to Elrond, and it was agreed that they should leave the next morning. To their delight, Gandalf said, "I think I shall come too, at least as far as Bree. I want to see Butterbur." In the evening, they went to say good-bye to Bilbo. "Well, if you must go, you must," he said. "I am sorry. I shall miss you. It is nice just to know that you are about the place. But I am getting very sleepy." Then he gave Frodo his mithril coat and sting, forgetting that he had already done so. And he gave him also 3 books of lore that he had made at various times, written in his spidery hand, and labeled on their red backs. Translation from the Elvish by B.B. To Sam he gave a little bag of gold. Almost the last drop of the Smog vintage, he said, "May come in useful if you think of getting married, Sam." Sam blushed. "I have nothing much to give to you young fellows," he said to Merry and Pippin, accept good advice. And when he had given them a fair sample of this, he added a last item in Shire fashion. Don't let your heads get too big for your hats. But if you don't finish growing up soon, you're going to find hats and clothes expensive. But if you want to beat the old Took, said Pippin, I don't see why we shouldn't try and beat the bull roarer. Bilbo laughed, and he produced out of a pocket 2 beautiful pipes with pearl mouthpieces and bound with fine-wrought silver. Think of me when you smoke them, he said. The elves made them for me, but I don't smoke now. And then suddenly he nodded and went to sleep for a little. And when he woke up again, he said, Now, where were we? Yes, of course, giving presents. Which reminds me, what's become of my ring, Frodo, that you took away? I have lost it, Bilbo dear, said Frodo. I got rid of it, you know. What a pity, said Bilbo. I should have liked to see it again. But no, how silly of me. That's what you went for, wasn't it? To get rid of it? But it is all so confusing, for such a lot of other things seem to have got mixed up with it. Aragorn's affairs and the White Council and Gondor and the Horsemen and Southrons and Olipants. Did you really see one, Sam? And caves and towers and golden trees and goodness knows what besides. I evidently came back by much too straight a road for my trip. I think Gandalf might have shown me around a bit. But then the auction would have been over before I got back, and I should have had even more trouble than I did. Anyway, it's too late now, and really I think it's much more comfortable to sit here and hear about it all. The fire's very cozy here, and the food's very good, and there are elves when you want them. What more could one want? The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone. Let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin. But I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet. And as Bilbo murmured the last words, his head dropped on his chest, and he slept soundly. The evening deepened in the room, and the firelight burned brighter. And they looked at Bilbo as he slept and saw that his face was smiling. For some time they sat in silence, and then Sam, looking round at the room and the shadows flickering on the walls, said softly, I don't think, Mr. Frodo, that he's done much writing while we've been away. He won't ever write our story now. At that Bilbo opened an eye, almost as if he had heard. Then he roused himself. You see, I am getting so sleepy, he said, and when I have time to write, I only really like writing poetry. I wonder, Frodo, my dear fellow, if you would very much mind tidying things up a bit before you go. Collect all my notes and papers, and my diary too, and take them with you, if you will. You see, I haven't much time for the selection and the arrangement and all that. Get Sam to help, and when you've knocked things into shape, come back, and I'll run over it. I won't be too critical. Of course I'll do it, said Frodo. And of course I'll come back soon. It won't be dangerous anymore. There is a real king now, and he will soon put the roads in order. Thank you, my dear fellow, said Bilbo. That really is a very great relief to my mind. And with that he fell asleep again. The next day, Gandalf and the hobbits took leave of Bilbo in his room, for it was cold out of doors. And then they said farewell to Elrond and all his household. As Frodo stood upon the threshold, Elrond wished him a fair journey and blessed him. And he said, I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back, unless you come very soon. For about this time of the year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for Bilbo in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with him. These words no one else heard, and Frodo kept them to himself. Chapter 7. Homeward Bound. At last the hobbits had their faces turned towards home. They were eager now to see the Shire again, but at first they rode only slowly, for Frodo had been ill at ease. When they came to the ford of Brennan, he had halted and seemed loath to ride into the stream, and they noted that for a while his eyes appeared not to see them or things about him. All that day he was silent. It was the 6th of October. "Are you in pain, Frodo?" said Gandalf quietly as he rode by Frodo's side. "Well, yes I am," said Frodo. "It is my shoulder. The wound aches, and the memory of darkness is heavy on me. It was a year ago today. Alas, there are some wounds that cannot be wholly cured," said Gandalf. "I fear it may be so with mine," said Frodo. "There is no real going back. Though I may come to the Shire, it will not seem the same, for I shall not be the same. I am wounded with knife, sting, and tooth, and a long burden. Where shall I find rest?" Gandalf did not answer. By the end of the next day, the pain and unease had passed, and Frodo was merry again, as merry as if he did not remember the blackness of the day before. After that the journey went well, and the days went quickly by, for they rode at leisure, and often they lingered in the fair woodlands where the leaves were red and yellow in the autumn sun. At length they came to Weathertop, and it was then drawing towards evening, and the shadow of the hill lay dark on the road. Then Frodo begged them to hasten, and he would not look towards the hill, but rode through its shadow with head bowed and cloak drawn close about him. That night the weather changed, and a wind came from the west laden with rain, and it blew loud and chill, and the yellow leaves whirled like birds in the air. When they came to the Chetwood, already the boughs were almost bare, and a great curtain of rain veiled Bree Hill from their sight. So it was that near the end of a wild and wet evening in the last days of October, the 5 travelers rode up the climbing road and came to the south gate of Bree. It was locked fast, and the rain blew in their faces, and in the darkening sky low clouds went hurrying by, and their hearts sank a little, for they had expected more welcome. When they had called many times, at last the gatekeeper came out, and they saw that he carried a great cudgel. He looked at them with fear and suspicion, but when he saw that Gandalf was there, and that his companions were hobbits, in spite of their strange gear, then he brightened and wished them welcome. "Come in," he said, unlocking the gate. "We won't stay for news out here in the cold and the wet, a ruffianly evening. But old Barley will no doubt give you a welcome at the Pony, and there you'll hear all there is to hear. And there you'll hear later all that we say, and more," laughed Gandalf. "How is Harry?" The gatekeeper scowled. "Gone," he said, "but you'd best ask Barliman. Good evening." "Good evening to you," they said, and passed through. And then they noticed that behind the hedge at the roadside a long, low hut had been built, and a number of men had come out and were staring at them over the fence. When they came to Bill Ferny's house, they saw that the hedge there was tattered and unkempt, and the windows were all boarded up. "Do you think you killed him with that apple, Sam?" said Pippin. "I'm not so hopeful, Mr. Pippin," said Sam. "But I'd like to know what became of that poor pony. He's been on my mind many a time, and the wolves howling and all." At last they came to the prancing pony, and that at least looked outwardly unchanged, and there were lights behind the red curtains in the lower windows. They rang the bell, and Nob came to the door and opened it a crack and peeped through. And when he saw them standing under the lamp, he gave a cry of surprise. "Mr. Butterbur! Master!" he shouted. "They've come back." "Oh, have they? "I'll learn them," came Butterbur's voice, and out he came with a rush, and he had a club in his hand. But when he saw who they were, he stopped short, and the black scowl on his face changed to wonder and delight. "Nob, you woolly-pated ninny," he cried. "Can't you give old friends their names? You shouldn't go scare me like that, with times as they are. Well, well, and where have you come from? I never expected to see any of you folk again, and that's a fact, going off into the wild with that Strider and all those black men about. But I'm right glad to see you, and none more than Gandalf. Commute, the same rooms as before? They're free. Indeed, most rooms are empty these days, as I'll not hide from you, for you'll find it out soon enough. And I'll see what can be done about supper as soon as may be, but I'm short-handed at present. Hey, Nob, you slow coach. Tell Bob. Ah, but there I'm forgetting Bob's gone. Goes home to his folk at nightfall now. Well, take the guest ponies to the stables, Nob, and you'll be taking your horse to his stable yourself. Gandalf, I don't doubt. A fine beast, as I said when I first set eyes on him. Well, come in. Make yourselves at home." Mr. Butterbur had at any rate not changed his manner of talking, and still seemed to live in his old breathless bustle. And yet there was hardly anybody about, and all was quiet. From the common room there came a low murmur of no more than 2 or 3 voices. And seen closer in the light of 2 candles that he lit and carried before them, the landlord's face looked rather wrinkled and careworn. He led them down the passage to the parlor that they had used on that strange night more than a year ago, and they followed him, a little disquieted, for it seemed plain to them that old Barlyman was putting a brave face on some trouble. Things were not what they had been, but they said nothing and waited, as they expected. Mr. Butterbur came to the parlor after supper to see if all had been to their liking, as indeed it had. No change for the worse had yet come upon the beer or the victuals at the Pony, at any rate. "Now I won't make so bold as to suggest you should come to the common room tonight," said Butterbur. "You'll be tired, and there isn't many folk there this evening, anyway. But if you could spare me half an hour before you go to your beds, I would dearly like to have some talk with you, quiet-like by ourselves." "That is just what we should like, too," said Gandalf. "We are not tired. We have been taking things easy. We were wet, cold, and hungry, but all that you have cured. Come, sit down, and if you have any pipe weed, we'll bless you." "Well, if you'd called for anything else, I'd have been happier," said Butterbur. "That's just a thing that we're short of, seeing how we've only got what we grow ourselves, and that's not enough. There's none to be had from the Shire these days. But I'll do what I can." When he came back, he brought them enough to last them for a day or 2, a wad of uncut leaf. "Southflinch," he said, "and the best we have, but not the match of South Farthing, as I've always said, though I'm all for brie in most matters, begging your pardon." They put him in a large chair by the wood fire, and Gandalf sat on the other side of the hearth, and the hobbits in low chairs between them. And then they talked for many times half an hour, and exchanged all such news as Mr. Butterbur wished to hear or give. Most of the things which they had to tell were a mere wonder and bewilderment to their host, and far beyond his vision, and they brought forth few comments other than, "You don't say," often repeated in defiance of the evidence of Mr. Butterbur's own ears. "You don't say, Mr. Baggins, or is it Mr. Underhill? I'm getting so mixed up. You don't say, Master Gandalf. Well, I never. Who'd have thought it in our times?" But he did say much on his own account. Things were far from well, he would say. Business was not even fair, it was downright bad. No one comes nigh Bree now from outside. he said. And the inside folks, they stay at home mostly and keep their doors barred. It all comes of those newcomers and gangrels that began coming up the Greenway last year, as you may remember, but more came later. Some were just poor bodies running away from trouble, but most were bad men, full of thievery and mischief. And there was trouble right here in Bree, bad trouble. Why, we had a real set to, and there were some folk killed dead. If you'll believe me. I will indeed, said Gandalf. How many? 3 and 2, said Butterbur, referring to the big folk and the little. There was poor Matt Heathertoes and Roll-Eye Appledore, and little Tom Pickthorn from over the hill, and Willie Banks from up away, and one of the Underhills from Staddle. All good fellows in their midst. And Harry Goatleaf that used to be on the Westgate, and that Bill Fernie, they came in on the stranger's side, and they've gone off with them. And it's my belief they let them in. On the night of the fight, I mean. And that was after we showed them the gates and pushed them out before the year's end, that was. And the fight was early in the new year, after the heavy snow we had. And now they're gone for robbers and live outside, hiding in the woods beyond Arcot and out in the wilds north away. It's like a bit of the bad old times tales tell of, I say. It isn't safe on the road, and nobody goes far, and folk lock up early. We have to keep watchers all round the fence, and put a lot of men on the gates at nights. Well, no one troubled us, said Pippin, and we came along slowly, and kept no watch. We thought we'd left all trouble behind us. Ah, that you haven't, master, more's the pity, said Butterbur. But it's no wonder they left you alone. They wouldn't go for armed folk, with swords and helmets and shields and all. Make them think twice, that would. And I must say it put me aback a bit when I saw you. Then the hobbits suddenly realized that people had looked at them with amazement, not out of surprise at their return, so much as in wonder at their gear. They themselves had become so used to warfare and to riding in well-arrayed companies that they had quite forgotten that the bright mail peeping from under their cloaks, and the helms of Gondor and the Mark, and the fair devices on their shields, would seem outlandish in their own country. And Gandalf, too, was now riding on his tall gray horse, all clad in white with a great mantle of blue and silver over all, and the long sword glamdring at his side. Gandalf laughed. Well, he said, if they are afraid of just 5 of us, then we have met worse enemies on our travels. But at any rate, they will give you peace at night while we stay. How long will that be? Said Butterbur. I'll not deny we should be glad to have you about for a bit. You see, we're not used to such troubles, and the rangers have all gone away, folk tell me. I don't think we've rightly understood till now what they did for us, for there's been worse than robbers about. Wolves were howling round the fences last winter, and there's dark shapes in the woods, dreadful things that it makes the blood run cold to think of. It's been very disturbing, if you understand me. I expect it has, said Gandalf. Nearly all lands have been disturbed these days, very disturbed. But cheer up, Barliman. You have been on the edge of very great troubles, and I'm only glad to hear that you have not been deeper in. But better times are coming. Maybe better than any you remember. The Rangers have returned. We came back with them. And there's a king again, Barliman. He will soon be turning his mind this way. Then the Greenway will be opened again, and his messengers will come north, and there will be comings and goings, and the evil things will be driven out of the wastelands. Indeed, the waste in time will be waste no longer, and there will be people and fields where once there was wilderness. Mr. Butterbur shook his head. If there's a few decent, respectable folk on the roads, that won't do no harm, he said. But we don't want no more rabble and ruffians. And we don't want no outsiders at Bree, nor near Bree at all. We want to be let alone. I don't want a whole crowd of strangers camping here and settling there and tearing up the wild country. You will be let alone, Barliman, said Gandalf. There is room enough for realms between Isen and Greyflood, or along the shoreland south of the Brandywine, without anyone living within many days' ride of Bree. And many folk used to dwell away north, 100 miles or more from here, at the far end of the Greenway, on the North Downs or by Lake Evendom. Up away by Deadman's Dyke, said Butterbur, looking even more dubious. That's haunted land, they say. None but a robber would go there. The rangers go there, said Gandalf. Deadman's Dyke, you say. So it has been called for long years, but its right name, Barliman, is for Nostarain, Norbury of the Kings. And the king will come there again one day, and then you'll have some fair folk riding through. Well, that sounds more hopeful, I'll allow, said Butterbur. And will be good for business, no doubt, so long as he lets Bree alone. He will, said Gandalf. He knows it and loves it. Does he now? Said Butterbur, looking puzzled. Though I'm sure I don't know why he should, sitting in his big chair up in his great castle, hundreds of miles away, and drinking wine out of golden cup, I shouldn't wonder. What's the pony to him, or mugs o' beer? Not but what my beer's good, Gandalf. It's been uncommon good, since you came in the autumn of last year and put a good word on it. And that's been a comfort in trouble, I will say. Ah, said Sam, but he says your beer is always good. He says, of course he does. He's Strider, the chief of the Rangers. Haven't you got that into your head yet? It went in at last, and Butterbur's face was a study in wonder. The eyes in his broad face grew round, and his mouth opened wide, and he gasped. Strider, he exclaimed when he got back his breath. Him with a crown and all, and a golden cup. Well, what are we coming to? Better times for Bree at any rate, said Gandalf. I hope so. I'm sure, said Butterbur. Well, this has been the nicest chat I've had in a month of Mondays. And I'll not deny that I'll sleep easier tonight and with a lighter heart. You've given me a powerful lot to think over, but I'll put that off until tomorrow. I'm for bed, and I've no doubt you'll be glad of your beds too. Hey, Nob, he called, going to the door. Nob, you slow coach. Nob, he said to himself, slapping his forehead. Now, what does that remind me of? Not another letter you've forgotten, I hope. Mr. Butterbur, said Mary. Now, Mr. Brandybuck, don't go reminding me of that. But there, you've broken my thought. Now where was I? Nub, stab, that was it. I've something that belongs to you. If you recollect Bill Fernie and the Horse of Thieving, his pony as you bought, well, it's here. Come back all of itself, it did. But where it had been to you know better than me. It was as shaggy as an old dog and as lean as a clothes rail, but it was alive. Nobbs looked after it. What? My Bill, cried Sam. Well, I was born lucky, whatever my gaffer may say. There's another wish come true. Where is he? Sam would not go to bed until he had visited Bill in his stable. The traveler stayed in Bree all the next day, and Mr. Butterbur could not complain of his business next evening at any rate. Curiosity overcame all fears, and his house was crowded. For a while, out of politeness, the hobbits visited the common room in the evening and answered a good many questions. Bree memories being retentive, Frodo was asked many times if he had written his book. Not yet, he answered. I'm going home now to put my notes in order." He promised to deal with the amazing events at Bree, and so give a bit of interest to a book that appeared likely to treat mostly of the remote and less important affairs away south. Then one of the younger folk called for a song, but at that a hush fell, and he was frowned down, and the call was not repeated. Evidently, there was no wish for any uncanny events in the common room again. No trouble by day, nor any sound by night, disturbed the peace of Bree while the travelers remained there. But the next morning they got up early, for as the weather was still rainy, they wished to reach the Shire before night, and it was a long ride. The Bree folk were all out to see them off, and were in merrier mood than they had been for a year, and those who had not seen the strangers in all their gear before gaped with wonder at them, at Gandalf with his white beard, and the light that seemed to gleam from him, as if his blue mantle was only a cloud over sunshine, and at the four hobbits like riders upon errantry out of almost forgotten tales. Even those who had laughed at all the talk about the king began to think there might be some truth in it. "Well, good luck on your road, and good luck to your homecoming," said Mr. Butterbur. "I should have warned you before that all's not well in the Shire neither, if what we hear is true. Funny goings-on, they say, but one thing drives out another, and I was full of my own troubles. But if I may be so bold, you've come back changed from your travels, and you look now like folk as can deal with troubles out of hand. I don't doubt you'll soon set all to rights. Good luck to you. And the oftener you come back, the better I'll be pleased." They wished him farewell and rode away, and passed through the west gate and on towards the Shire. Bill the pony was with them, and as before he had a good deal of baggage, but he trotted along beside Sam and seemed well content. "I wonder what old Barlyman was hinting at," said Frodo. "I can guess some of it," said Sam gloomily. "What I saw in the mirror, trees cut down and all, and my old gaffer turned out of the row. I ought to have hurried back quicker." "And something's wrong with the South Farthing evidently," said Mary. "There's a general shortage of pipeweed." "Whatever it is," said Pippin, "Lotho will be at the bottom of it. You can be sure of that." "Deep in, but not at the bottom," said Gandalf. "You have forgotten Saruman. He began to take an interest in the Shire before Mordor did.